Welcome back, everyone, to the Cancel for Maintenance podcast. If this is your first time joining us, we are a show that takes a behind-the-scenes look into the gritty, non-glamorous life of aircraft maintenance. We share some laughs, impart some wisdom, all in hopes of giving you that split seconds relief in your day that can hopefully prevent a mishap. I am your co-host, Six.
I'm MVP.
And our third host, Shoreline, is once again remotely monitoring our audio, making sure our faces stay fit for radio. So before we actually began the show, we had a good maybe 10, 15 minutes of just talking about how our living conditions while we're out on a tour for the HAI HELI-Expo is a little bit, how do I say?
Well, it's luxurious from the dungeon that I sit in when I'm normally recording.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm sitting in a comfy chair with this nice granite table in between us. You're in a comfy chair. There's a fireplace to my right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is. I don't know how I'm going to be able to go back.
You're right. Like once I've tasted luxury, I don't think I can ever get it out of the mouth. You know.
Yeah.
Or I don't think I can downgrade again.
I think I'm technically classified as bougie now.
Bougie, yes. So big shout out to our patrons for one, our affiliates, and our listeners for affording us this opportunity, granting us permission to have these kind of setups and be able to go to the HAI HELI-Expo, which, fun fact, if you haven't remembered from our previous episode, we are at the very last ever HAI HELI-Expo, and it is now going to be called Verticon, which will be happening, I want to say it's Dallas, Texas, for 2025.
I think that is the next location. They had the press conference today.
Yes, they did.
The board of directors, well, at least one of them.
Yep.
She was there talking about all that. And one of our good listeners and guests we've had on, we got to meet her for the first time today in person, which was amazing. And she knew that board of director person as well and gave us kind of a rundown on her history and background. And let me tell you, that's a woman who's what I guess you could call a boss bitch, man. Like, yeah. she's running it, and running lots of things all at the same time.
Oh yeah, and I applaud people who can do stuff like that, because just that amount to account for even just one of it takes up so much bandwidth, I can imagine.
And she did it all in high heels.
Yes. and then she instantly had to show everybody what's up by putting on her new loafers and whatnot. That was pretty.
Oh man, you know how, like, if anybody's seen The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy's heels that are red and sparkly, well, just take those shoes, cut the heels off, make them black, but the same sparkle. It was impressive.
It was awesome. And it's great. And one thing we've said again in the previous episode, which we're going to reiterate again now, is it was amazing to meet so many different people at the expo. Well, was HAI HELI, now soon going to be Verticon. But we're glad to be a part of this pin in history where they've moved it aside and now they're going on a different venture. Same stuff, but just under a different name, under a different look. Possibly different vision, who knows, right? And it seems small to me, or might seem small, but to me that's kind of big, because like now you have exclusivity with stuff, right? So if you've ever been to some kind of expo with a certain name and now that doesn't exist anymore for whatever reason.
Well, you had mentioned it earlier today, so there's a difference between having con in the name and expo in the name.
Yes.
And go ahead and explain what
that
is.
This is Six's point of view. I could be 100% wrong. So when we were talking on the floor, from expo to con, I believe is genius, because when you hear expo, you're thinking in terms of sales, right? Like it's just a bunch of sales pitches, presentation pitches, something to kind of get you interested to buy something, right? Oh, and sometimes these things that they're showcasing or wanting you to buy it's like a one of, like it's not like the actual end product hasn't been made yet. So it's more like concept art stuff, right? In most cases, in some cases, right? Not all, but some cases, right? Like they'll say, here's our plan, here's our project, here's our theory, here's our whatever, right? That'd be the place to show you, get people hyped up and interested, kind of like a pre-order. Like, oh, that looks cool. When's that coming out? Oh, coming soon, 2028 and shit, Mm-hmm. Whereas you have con, to me, that sings Comic Con, right? This is where like you have many different enthusiasts come in. They have their own collectibles. They have their own vendors. They have cosplayers and, people who can really just show off a hobby. And they bring in people, experts from said hobby or said field, and they bring them in and they share how they, air quotes, used to be one of us, how they're, air quotes, still one of us, and how they just turned their hobby into a job for the most part. And I think renaming it from an expo to con kind of facilitates, it's not just about a sales pitch. It's not about proof of concept. It is that. But when you hear a con, you're not talking about enthusiasts, like people who do this for a hobby, people who love this so much that they're willing to display this to everyone. Right. And an example I give again is Comic Con. It's like when you hear Comic Con, you're not going there to buy comics. You're there to experience comics with your friends, your family, watch other people like take their love of comics to such an extent that you almost mistaken them for the real thing. And then likewise with Comic Con or cons in general, you have like, say, people who drew the stuff or people who voice acted the stuff come on in, give their spill about it, how they came up with the characters, how they voiced it, what was it like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in terms of Verticon or any type of aviation con, you're now I'm thinking of the idea of like, okay, now we're talking about hobbyists who have their hand gliders in their garage, building it from scratch, or you have
paragliders and or power gliders,
power gliders, yes,
yeah, or home built stuff,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then say like you got mechanics who built toolboxes from scratch, or mechanics who found a need and addressed it by creating a business. Like there was a huge need for electronic logbooks. There was nothing around. I took an iPad. I coded some stuff in the App Store. Boom, skis, electronic logbook. And then someone looks at that and like, that's a fantastic idea. Here's a couple grand. Let's see what you can do with it, right? And next thing you know, we have like stuff like Corridor or now Comis or IMDS.
Or Ultraman.
Or Ultraman, like imperfect systems got it, right? But imagine, like the idea that came about, like how that happened, right? Like some guy just like, I'm fed up, tired of reading other people's scratch. And then he's like, what if we just type this out? Well, that's going to take forever because we have typewriters and blah. People are not great at Microsoft Word or whatever. Well, what if I simplify it down and turn it into an iPad app or some shit, right? And then boom skis, now we have Corridor or whatever else, right? So that's how I feel like con kind of brings in more creative, enthusiastic people versus just like an expo where you're like, and we mentioned in a previous episode again, where like you see a whole lot of suits for what, right? Are you sales? Are you representing? Are you demonstrating? Are you exhibiting? Are you putting an image of some sort, right? Or like we've learned from one of the sessions again from the previous instructor about hope is not a strategy. Sometimes, people, they feel like that's their way of respecting your time at the expo by dressing uber nice, right? Mm-hmm. It may not be what comes across, which we've voiced avidly, but that's kind of like their way of saying, well, we respect you for entertaining us, right? And I feel a lot of that is like, is great, but it also kind of sends this image like you have to be of a certain caliber just to be here. Versus con, like it automatically, it instantly tells me informal is the name of the game. Show up in your pants, in your hoodies, in your I love helicopters t-shirt or I love drones t-shirt, and all is welcome,
Right, yeah, it's all walks of life, like you said. anywhere from the hobby, the professional mechanic and pilot to the weekend enthusiast to plane spotters. Hey, check out, here's the binoculars and camera setup that I use at my local airport kind of thing. Hey, strap this this 2-stroke engine on your back with a giant fan and hold on to this giant kite and fly around,
Yeah. And for all I know, that's not the direction that they want to go for Verticon or any other type of con. But instantly, like I'm drawn to it because it says con. And again, when I think of that, my first thought is Comic Con, movie cons, stuff where people are allowed to nerd out, and that's the cool thing to do, right?
Yeah, and you'll probably even see drones, but you'll probably see varying levels of it, just like we kind of saw at this one. But you have people who do drone racing, right? So they might even set up a drone racing course, and they're going to run demos where they take these little quadcopters and haul ass at 100 miles an hour through hoops and buildings and tight spaces. And
right. And that's what I feel. I'm hoping that's where they're going with, to bring in the enthusiasts. By all means, I'm not in anywhere near their brain cell on this, but you would still be able to have the expo experience, and that can just be a separate level, right? Depending on the size of the con. But if you have enough people coming in with that kind of enthusiasm, oh, con, what's that about, right? Oh, it's about helicopters. Ooh, what about it, right? You already got them jazzed up to buy stuff. So that income coming in, and you're realizing oh my God, this is huge. And you're going to probably need a 4th floor just to kind of accommodate both the hobbyists. And then you're going to have a separate one for the business side of the house, right? And you're getting the full effect of all of it. Plus, you got some hobbyist enthusiasm to add to the mix. And the expo at the HAI HELI-Expo where we were at, it was very tight, right? But there's we saw a whole lot of room where you can have hobbyist sections, right? Or they can even be allotted a certain time or certain room or whatever the case. Like, hey, come up to ballroom X, and here's all the hobbyist stuff. See all the R&D that people are doing. And that would be super cool.
Right.
I know there's a bunch of mechanics out there who more or less build their own plane. Like, I'm going to learn how to fly, but first I'm going to learn how to build it. Or I'm going to build it myself. And then you can't say shit to me because I'm the one who built 50% of it. So obviously I got to be licensed to do this thing.
Right.
I can't remember what section of the FAA says that if you completed more, or if you've assembled more than 50% of the plane, then it's basically you're licensed for it or something like that. I can't remember the verbiage. I might be fucking that up. I'm sorry.
There is a section in there about that, but I can't remember specifics on verbiage.
Yeah. So that was, I think I'm going in some direction in that case, but there are mechanics out there who more or less said, I want to fly, but I want to put hands on the plane that made it, or that I'm flying in. So they will make their own plane.
Like the guy I used to work with. Hey, I need just IA to certify my plane that I put together. So let me go ahead and call him out. Say, hey, everything looks good. Let me see your license. Here you go. No, that's your pilot's license. I need your airframe and power plant. The what now?
Oh,
that's how that guy ended up going learning about what an AMP was, and he had to go to school and get it so he could have his plane work that he did bought off so he could go fly it.
Yeah, but hey, what a way to learn.
He was a mechanical genius, but just said, it's like any other thing. I'll just put it together and take off, take off and drive or ride or fly or whatever.
Yeah. So and then say nonprofits like Stay Indiana, that one we were talking about, or that one nonprofit where they teach kids how to build a plane and then learn how to fly it. Yep. Similar way, you're gonna spark that kind of people to come on in, right? When changing from expo to con.
And I think that's what we heard in that press conference today. I can't remember the lady's name, but I think she mentioned it. It's to generate interest from the younger generations, because if you look at, I'd say, the majority of the age groups, be it maintainers or pilots, there are the outliers, right? There's the extreme to the older side and extreme to the younger side. but majority of us are late 30s to, I'd say, late 50s.
Yes.
Right? But as much of us as there are, the influx isn't keeping up with the demand of the people retiring out.
Yes. And matter of fact, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's, again, why I think they're transforming it into con, like dropping Expo, putting con, is because, like you said, like MVP and I, we're walking this floor. We're probably like the I don't know, like some of the most the youngest people in that expo.
I mean, yeah, I may not look like it, but I would say we were trend to be on the younger side of the spectrum that was there.
Yes, right. I mean, there were outliers too, like MVP said, like 6-year-old kids, 10-year-old kids, right? But that I wouldn't call them as enthusiasts just yet, right? I would say, like, okay, they're probably tagging with their parents. They want to expose them to the world that is aviation so they can grow with that and develop the fundamentals. But actual, like, in the making things happen, whether it be wrenching or it be flying, I want to say the youngest of them all, like actively doing things, was maybe 26. I want to say maybe 26. Or he was a young kid with an old face. I don't know,
Yeah.
And I believe that that's another move why they want to do it, as you said, from that one board member and this other fine lady that we talked to, that they're trying to attract the young and the enthusiastic and the innovative to come be a part of this, so we can keep that continuous improvement cycle rolling.
And I think what was the most interesting is, we get on here and talk about it. And yeah, we talk about the down and the outs of it, but I mean, that's the reality in any situation, in any career field. But we also talk about the fun, positive sides of it. And we met a lot of people who sing the same song we're singing.
Oh, yes.
We were all just kind of gathered in one place finally, but in the grand scheme of things, and I think they said there was close to 18 to 20,000 people that were at this expo, something
like that. Yeah, it was up there. I think we get the final number count once I think they're gonna publish the final number count, but to get a full tally. Yeah,
right. But what I'm saying is, wow, that's a lot of people, and it was a lot of people in one place. But we were just that. We all happened to just finally get in one place, and we're all having these side conversations and everything else and discussing just this. But then scatter us back across the globe. That's 18 to 20,000 people globally that are trying. Because there's a lot of people here from other countries as well. But let's just use the United States, for example. That's 18 to 20,000 out of how many people do we have in the States now? 3 billion?
Something like that.
Like that. I mean, like, that's a drop in the bucket. Yeah. It's a very small niche.
Yep. So
and so we're trying to do our part, and it was nice to meet others doing the same thing.
Right. And especially for helicopters too. And I love the fact that they're gone from the HAI Heli specifically going to Verticon, because now it encompasses all things vertical flight. That includes helos, that includes drones, that includes those hang gliders with the fans on the back. If it can go up, straight up and down as a flight path, it's going to be part of that con, which is huge.
Well, okay, so are we bringing in the Osprey and we bringing in the 35 then?
I don't know about the F-35. Just it may have, right? Because
I mean, it can do vertical in some configurations,
right? And so that's a good point, right? So now we're talking about VTOL stuff, right? That's a big one. And now you're gonna have way more people in it. Now I don't think they're gonna just reduce it down. It's like whoa, time out. Like we're trying to keep to our rotary wing roots here, which I understand, right? Because fixed wing does get a vast majority of all things airplane. Like some people still don't to this day believe that helicopters are airplanes. They just think like they're their own thing, right?
Yeah, they call them rotor wings.
Yeah, same with drones, right? A lot of people don't acknowledge that drones are airplanes. And we can understand why to a degree, because majority of what you hear is air quote drones are just like those quadcopter stuff that people finick around with or dolly around with at a park or taking pictures of houses and stuff like that. right? Which, yes, right, I can get it. But if we're talking like the new innovative drones, like the stuff people are experimenting with, like Amazon, the military, commercial airlines nowadays, or commercial delivery airlines,
Yeah.
or firefighters now, like aerial firefighters. I mean, drones are fast becoming a very useful and inexpensive tool. You know,
Well, and I think at these cons or expos or whatever, you're going to start seeing more presence from artificial intelligence creators,
right?
because as that develops, and it's developing at a rapid pace,
Mhm.
It's going to make its way into our industry more than it already has. It's pretty much there already. We're just not calling it that.
Yeah, and I can agree that to the point. But I can safely tell everybody who's a pilot or ever dreamed of being a pilot, AI for at least for a good while is not going to be replacing you, right? And the reason why they're not is because the level of confidence is not there for them to take full control of an aircraft that has people in it.
Yeah, you'll still be there as a fail safe.
You know, but they did demonstrate certain aspects of AI, since we're on that subject, at the expo, soon to be con, about what AI can do right now as far as aviation. And we had many episodes on that where we talked about how AI is being implemented, how it could be implemented, and what sort of things that it's looking out for the future. As of right now, the AI embedded software, or whatever the case may be, is helping us in terms of diagnostics. How is the aircraft running? How does it help us predict what's happening next? And they did showcase a little bit of this at the expo about how AI is helping the pilots fly better, right? Lessening that workload for you as a pilot to focus on the important things, which was another subject that was talked about at the expo as far as classes is concerned. Like this one gentleman gave an example of how when he was up and coming as a pilot, how it had too little information and they had to more or less fly off the seat of their pants, which is actually a thing.
Right.
To the point nowadays where you have too much information, like you got too much going around and too many things you have to pay special mind to. And from previous episodes of ours where we mentioned, like, you can have all the data points in the world and be data saturated until your eyes turn off or go out. But what are you using it for? Is it helping you? Is it giving you a better gauge of what the situation is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And in more or less, the AI stuff is taking all that informational load that today's aviation technology is doing, and it's basically dumbing it down, right? It's giving, instead of you having to mine 15 gauges at once, now it's just going to tell you, turn left, you freaking idiot.
Right.
Right. And then the same individual, he was talking about how things are being trying to be reframed into words that are easier for you to understand, right? Like left versus right, number one versus number two. And he gave an example of how like a certain customer refused to buy a plane because he started the number two engine instead of number one. And it was just a simple wording issue where they thought number two universally meant start this second,
Right.
when it really was talking about a position of on where it is on the aircraft.
Right. So they thought when they threw the switch that when engine number two spooled, they're like, "Whoa, your aircraft's bad. You went to start number one and number two spooled.
Yeah.
Like that's a wiring issue, you know."
Yeah. And it's like, no. Number two is talking about the side, in which case for a majority of us is the right-hand side, right? And then there's many different ways to say the same thing. That's all the semantic stuff.
He even talked about like the abbreviations and euphemisms and sayings, right? And he was talking about where he had a student pilot, and then he said, pull her up and hover.
Yep.
And the aircraft didn't move. Just sat there and gave it a minute and goes, pull her up and hover. And the student looks over and goes, who's her?
Yeah. What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? And he goes, oh, pull on the collective and hover at 3 feet. Whoop. The
Yeah.
aircraft goes and hovers at 3 feet. And it's like, you know, we use these abbreviations, the acronyms and all these things, but a lot of people aren't privy to those. And I can tell you, I've had several people that have come to work for me, and a bunch of us in the shop will use acronyms. And finally, there'll be a couple people like, okay, I'm lost in the conversation. You guys keep saying this, but I don't know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, oh, because of the environment we grew up in, you know, for our early parts of our career, we're used to all these acronyms, these sayings, these abbreviations,
Mm-hmm.
and you take it for granted that somebody else, that everybody knows them.
Yep.
But that's not the case. So you have to kind of plain speak. And he even used another example of the clock.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let's use your call sign. 6. Hey, check your 6.
Mm-hmm.
A younger person, like if I told my kids that, they'd go, what do you mean check your 6? What the hell is that?
Yeah. Because
they grew up in a digital world. They, you know, you and I were still fortunate enough to have analog, you know, clocks. But so when I say 6, that means, you know, if I'm on the dial of a clock, I'm looking at 12, 6 is behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Or you know, traffic at 3 o'clock, 500 feet AGL.
Mm-hmm.
Where's 3 o'clock? You know, you gotta, and so some people don't know that now.
Yep. And I like the fact that they mentioned that, and it also went into what's common sense for you may not be common sense for somebody else. And I love the fact that you brought that up during the conversation. And it says like, well, if common sense was common, everyone would have it, right? And that's exactly why we have certain procedures written the way they are, or they're written as warnings, cautions, and so forth in a manual. And
well, you said it earlier, because I said if common sense was common, everybody would have it, and you said yes, and that's exactly. If it was common, then we wouldn't need procedures. Nothing would be written down, because we would just all know what to do.
Yep. And then you also have those individuals, mechanics included, that will fire back like, well, it didn't tell me to do that, right?
No, but do I need to tell you not to stick your hand in the inlet of a running engine, like a running turbine? Like what are we? Really talking about?
And I'm sure there's going to be people like, well, duh, that's common sense. We know that we shouldn't do that. Like, how do you know, actually? And I'll tell you the reason why you do know is because you heard stories galore, and because of your emotional response, like, hey, you know, this is spinning kind of fast. I should probably not put my hand in there.
Look at about it, or you got hurt once before.
Mm-hmm.
Think about when you were a kid and you went to go touch the stove and your mom would smack your hand away.
Yeah.
Stop, it's hot. The stove is hot.
Yep.
And then you might not listen. And so one time your mom's just going to let you burn yourself. Just, ow, ooh, ow. And you start crying, and your mom looks at you and goes, see, dumbass?
Yep.
I told you it was hot, but you learned.
Yep.
You learned. And you're like, well, I'm not going to do that again. And he had a great quote from Nelson Mandela in that speech, which was, I don't lose. I either win or I learn.
Yes. And that's a big one. And in some cases, for us, especially as mechanics, you know, like a lot of the lessons learned while the incident is happening. You know, it's kind of like when the example was with the stove, right? Like you touch a hot stove, it doesn't take not 1 second for you to realize as you put your hand on that stove, like, yep, this is a dumb decision. And then by the time you say that in your head, ow, right, you burned yourself. And so like that's kind of like the sad learning curve as for us as mechs is like, you'll be in the midst of a mistake, realize you made a bad decision, you still feel the pain, and then afterwards, like you start to subliminally process, I'm never doing this again, right? And it kind of goes into this whole social experiment with, like, say, monkeys, for instance, where like they get shown something bad enough, they start to trickle this out. You start sharing it. You start teaching other peoples about this, which is a good and bad, because now they're learning something is bad and just accepting it without understanding why. Right? Like, don't do this, light bulb bad. But why though? Right? And then this kind of goes into, this is, I don't know why, but this is how we've always done it. Right? Like, I got taught, this is how I was taught how to do it, so this is what I'm teaching you. And we mentioned this again from a previous episode, where once learned, it's very hard to, almost impossible to unlearn. So once you learn bad habits or bad procedures, bad policies, or bad way of doing things, it's going to be extremely hard for you to unlearn that and we recognize that, but just because something was a bad decision and had a good outcome, we're repeating this again, doesn't mean it's good.
Right.
You know, and this kind of goes into like some of our lessons that we've absorbed throughout our time at the expo, and this has been out of 2 days thus far, and like we said, we're able to have like-minded people, similar enthusiasm in a room, and be able to connect and share these thoughts with each other, and more or less like be able to understand how the same thing can be communicated 2 different ways, or 2 or more different ways. And so like that kind of reframed our mode of thinking of how we let things going, and also kind of help us pump the brakes on ourselves for one, when like this may not be readily available information for somebody. You know, somebody may just legitimately be ignorant to that fact. And I don't mean ignorant as a negative thing. It's just more like this person has not learned that step yet. You know, and I feel like going back to what we're saying about the renaming thing, not just Verticon, and we're saying this as an example, but for saying something, for rewording something in the hopes of attracting more or communicating that better, I feel that's a major win, and that's a genius move, because although the name itself may sound what's the word? Not kind of like hokey, I guess the word.
Cheesy, or
cheesy, yes, cheesy.
Like cheap marketing, you know, like a fast food restaurant might do, or something like that.
Yeah, you know.
But that's it's not that. It's not to take away. It's because look, if I'm a youth, you know, and somebody says, "Hey, do you want to go to the HAI HELI-Expo?" and you're going, "That sounds kind of boring."
Yes.
You say, "Hey, you want to go to Verticon?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, Verticon sounds sweet." You know,
right.
like,
you know, like it same content, same substance, right? But we worded it different. We reframed the narrative, and now you're like, "Oh, this sounds fun," right? Regardless if it is or not, right? Your enthusiasm's already peaked. Like, what the heck is Verticon, right? Or it's kind of like hey guys, so we need you to pull 15 extra hours on a Friday. What the hell? Why? Right? Instead of saying like, hey gents, so mission is sliding to the right. You'll be thoroughly compensated. We need some guys to make this happen because X, Y, and Z, right? You've reframed the narrative. You gave them an end goal and a purpose. So like, oh, okay, got it, right?
Yeah, or some incentive, right? You say, hey, I need people to hit me a home run on Friday. I need some volunteers. The mission slid. If I just need people to say, those who stay and take care of it, don't come in Monday.
Yeah.
You know, something like, oh, word, I'm still getting my time off. I'll just, yeah, cool. I got you. You know what I mean?
Right. So like the need is still the same, and the requirement are still the same. You just reword it in such a way that's like not abrasive, right?
Yeah, it softens the blow, essentially. I mean, you're still getting what you've done, but it sounds way better to say that than I come in and say, 6, you're working 15 extra hours on Friday because the mission slid. And I chuck the deuce up and walk back to my office, and 6 is going, what the hell?
Yeah, like, no, absolutely.
Yeah. Do I get a say in this? Like, sure doesn't seem like it. So, no, even if I could, at that point, I'm going, no.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, well, I'll give you Monday off. Like, nah,
I don't care.
I don't believe you now.
Yeah, because you already closed that loop, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that kind of goes into like another previous one. Same instructor, same type of lessons. Where like being an effective instructor means being an effective communicator, right? You got to be able to know what you're saying, but also be open to collaboration.
Right. So if I come and say, 6, you're working this Friday, extra 15 hours, that's it, and I walk off. Because because the mission slid and I'm gone, you're going, no, and then if you're like, no, I'm not going to do that, and I could, even at that point, if I came back and tried to throw some incentives at you, you're going, no, because my response or my method of initial communication shut down the communication.
Yep.
You don't want to hear any more from me, and so there's nothing more I can say. that would sweeten the deal enough for you to submit and say, okay, I'll work the extra 15 hours on Friday. But if I come in and say, and one of the examples used was you're teaching a class, right? Mm-hmm. And somebody has a question, and you should welcome all questions, whether no matter what type of question it is. Just answer it and move on. You might think it's dumb, but don't show that you think it's dumb. Mm-hmm. Answer it and move on. But one of the things was, if I go, Six, we're talking about a subject, and I go, Six, what's your opinion on this? And you give me your opinion, and I go, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Not only have I shut off communication from you because you're going to clam up and never say anything else, but everybody else that just witnessed that interaction in the training class, no one's going to say anything. Yep. Even if they have legit questions, no one's going to say anything. They're just going to twiddle their thumbs and go, I hope this is over soon.
Yep. And I love the fact that you mentioned that, because that's kind of like a common theme, especially for us as mechanics. Like, we have a lot to say, but when asked, it almost never comes out, right? And we've seen this firsthand, and we thought it was just a phenomena within our little circle of where we're at presently. But as we're at this expo, we ran into other mechanics, which were fairly easy to spot, if I'm being honest. But we ran into other mechanics, and they were enthusiastic about what their product was, if it was there. Like, hey, yep, this is my plane. This is what I do. Lousy-dozzy, right? And we started getting to understand them better, hearing their stories and whatnot. But the stories didn't start flowing until we were able to demonstrate that we were of the same cloth and we had the same problems. And then all of a sudden the floodgate opens, like, oh, let me tell you about incident X. Let me tell you about pay cut Z. Let me tell you about denied pay raise this, my lack of quality life, how everyone told me the grass is greener on the other side, even though they just want to keep me lousy-dozzy, you know what I mean? So all of that trained us to just clam up, because when we did voice our opinions, either nobody listened or they just fed you enough to shut you up, right?
Right. Yeah, you were told what they thought you wanted to hear.
Yep.
Which ties in with what we talked about yesterday. They made a decision based on perceived outcomes.
Yes.
I think this is what you're going to want to hear. So here's what I'm going to tell you. But meanwhile, because the communication was so crappy, I've already shut them off. I don't want to hear anything else. You either give me what I want, or that's it. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to side with the employer on some of these when they say, hey, air crew strike, went on a strike and got a 40% pay increase. Man, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to do it. We fix them. The ones who are flying just got paid more, and we fix what they're flying in. Okay, we're on strike too. We would like the same.
Yeah.
And they're like, best we can do, 7%. And you're like, wait a minute.
Time out.
How do we have funds for this and not the ones who fix it? And then they say, well, it's budgetary issues. All right, cool, Jack. And we were talking to I don't know if we want to say her handle on here or not, but we were talking with her today in her specific situation, mm-hmm. one of our guests, and she was, they got essentially a bullshit letter from their finance person that mm-hmm. said, look, here's the financial reasons why, and here's why pay shouldn't be tied with the cost of living increases, mm-hmm. and blah, blah, blah. And if you don't like it, move on. Sounds good, friend.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Deuce.
Fair enough.
I'm out.
Right.
Here's my 2 weeks notice. And then like, and many times, because this happened to me, it's like, I'm going to seek employment elsewhere. Thank you mm-hmm. for your time. And like, whoa. We're just about to promote you here. We can give you this and that and the other. And you're like, where was this when I was doing the job without complaining? Like, mm-hmm. Oh, it's because you weren't complaining. Yeah, but I shouldn't have to put in my 2 weeks notice for this to happen.
Right.
And in many cases, you can choose to accept and stay or not. But like in my case and in our guest case, she was like, no, well, you're taking less money over there. I'm down for that because my quality of life is going to be better.
Yes.
And if you accept, it's like blood money, dude. It's like blood diamonds. Oh, okay. Accept this to stay. Uncle Sam got your ass now. Like, you know what I mean? It's you've just signed your life away now, and you're just going to be dogged.
Yep. And now, and they hold that over your head, right? And it's sad to say, like that's probably like one of the negatives of being at this expo / con was we met a bunch of mechanics, fantastic individuals, right? And we're glad we were able to share in some of their hate and discontent, and also sharing some of their highs and successes, right? But the comments consensus that we've been hearing is like. Exactly like MVP's story about our previous guest is like, and it was dime a dozen for the mechs that actually opened up with us. Like, I've been taught to shut my mouth and keep on trucking. I've been taught that when the gas tank hits 0 to keep going, because we have a higher priority, which is flying and making money. And then another example we were saying about that 7% raise was when these individuals have hit their life limit to keep on taking and keep on going, they ask for a little bit back to keep some in the gas tank to keep going, and they tell them like, well, no, because if you as an employee cannot meet the employer's needs, then you should find gainful employment elsewhere, which is a huge fuck you to the person giving you the labor that makes you money. Mm-hmm. Right. And imagine if you heard that from someone who's a high gainer, right? Or at least on paper is a high gainer saying that to you. You'd be like, whoa, time the fuck out. No. But you have the ones whose touch labor accumulates into that person making said revenue. You tell them, oh, whatever, dude, you're replaceable. We don't give a shit about you. Right. And the sad part is that was the consensus we heard from a lot of mechanics on the floor at this con / expo. And it was great to be able to connect with these individuals and tell them that, yes, there is a greener side to the house. There is a better way of life. There is a better way to communicate these things. And it validates our existence on this show because, yeah, we joke around. Actually, we haven't been joking around for quite a bit, but it validates our existence to do this because as we were perusing around the expo, mechanics knew of us. Mechanics knew what we do, but other people didn't. Not knocking, but pilots didn't know about us. Salespeople didn't know about us. Not us as the show, but us as mechanics, like the aircraft mechanic world. They're next to oblivious to our tribulations, our labor, and our suffering, because all they see is the end result, right? Whatever means got you there. We don't care as long as the means are met. And talking to people on the expo and hearing their stories and their situations, both from all sides of the field and the instructors that we've actually sat in classes on, the common narrative is, well, no, we want you to voice this, to open up, to say stuff like this. And again, going back to bad things are hard to unlearn is, the bad things happen to us as mechanics where we did the good things, but nothing came out of it. So like, why should I bother talking? Which is another reason why, again, we validate ourselves from this because we talk.
Right. We talk, you said it before. We've talked about it again with our cohorts at the expo. And that was your statement of we're economy employees.
Yes.
And just like we blew our minds, we blew their minds. Mm-hmm. Basically, what do you mean economy employees? Yeah, I bet you're doing the job of 5 people right now and getting paid as 1.
Yep.
Yeah, I am. Right. You're too expensive to replace.
Yep.
And they know that. So they're going to string the carrot in front of you in hopes that that'll be enough to keep you holding on for as long as they can, mm-hmm. without having to divulge too much more money into you. But what they realize it, but they fail to enact on it, that if they would just compensate you a little bit better or give you the trainings that you're asking for or give you a little bit of flexibility in your schedule, that one, ultimately when you decide to pull chocks and dip, they're going to have to hire 4 or 5 people to do the job that you were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to cost them more in the long run, but they're not. They're like, well, if I can step over the dollar to pick up a dime right now, that's what I'm going to do. And you're like, you're insane.
Yep. So yeah, and again, it was a fantastic experience. We highly recommend for those of you who've never been to some type of expo like this or con now. We highly suggest you do, because it was just like the networking alone was just amazing.
But even the showcase of abilities, right? We met a vendor today that takes gearboxes that were otherwise scrapped. Right? They came out for high time, and rather than whoever the manufacturer was or the operator, rather than spending the money to overhaul them, they just scrapped them, threw them in the junkyard or whatever. And this outfit has gone and taken good ones and ones straight out of the junkyard, and they have developed their own modifications and repairs that are certified by FAA, but they're exceed the original manufacturer's designs. Like they've improved upon repairs and maintenance of these older model gearboxes. Now there's the manufacturer that says, okay, well, I guess we can spend the time and money to overhaul them. It's going to cost $50,000. This company has gone and saying $50K, we can do it for $8.
Yeah.
And we zero time it and we certify it, and everything's designed in house. We're PMA, all that kind of stuff. And so what a like, it was really interesting to learn. Like, those are the kind of things you learn being in the industry. You say, we all know aviation's expensive, parts, whatever, hours of, cost per hour of operation. But the price difference between just the gearbox alone was impressive. And you're saying, oh, and it's really cool to learn that we're, as an industry, we're developing and improving upon original design to the point where we're making it better than original design, better, stronger, lighter, and essentially with these improved repairs that they've developed, you can the lifespan of that gearbox is virtually indefinite.
Yes.
Because if you can take one that was rusted to hell and clapped out and thrown in the junkyard and bring it back to serviceable life for $8,000, and once it hits its high time again, you bring it back and you can just zero time it every time for $8,000 versus $50K for an overhaul from the manufacturer, or
making a brand new one
for
$50K, yeah,
for more. Like that, what a cost savings to the operator.
Yes.
Now on the other side of it, maybe the OEM of that gearbox is like, man, that's like 30-year-old technology. We don't want to mess with that. We're investing so much money into R&D. We're looking to the future, the phase. Okay, yeah, you got to look to the future for continued sustained growth, but what's paying the bills and funding your R&D for that next phase of growth?
Right.
But in many companies will put insane price tags on stuff like that to drive business away. They didn't tell you no. They just put a tag on it to make you say no.
Yep.
We didn't tell you no. We just told you what it was going to cost. And if you're dumb enough to pay it, great. But if you're not, well, we didn't really want the business anyways because we're too busy. I just ran into this with the brakes on my truck. Right? I was telling you about that. I took it over there and they said, oh, it'll be $2,900 to replace your brakes. I said, I think you added an extra zero in there.
Yeah.
And they said, no, it's going to be $2,900. And I said, okay, thanks, but no thanks. I'll just figure it out. Well, let's see if we can get you a better price. $2,500. No thanks. I'll just go buy the parts myself, And so then I started researching, and I said, okay, I can actually do it myself for less than $600 in parts.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I guess I'll just take the time and do it. But that's the kind of stuff where it's like, I think they were just too busy and they didn't want to tell me no. So they gave me a ridiculous number, or they messed up and they were really just trying to price gouge me.
Yeah.
And then I go, wow, you're cooked. No, I'm not doing that. And then at that point, they can't say, okay, well, how about $1,000?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, $1,000. We were just able to shave off $1,900 like that.
Right.
So they can't do that because then it really makes it look like they were trying to take me for all I got. So I think we learned a little bit of that today too, with is happening, I think, in our industry. I'm not saying that was particularly that case, but when you look at the cost of that price difference from 8,000 from essentially just a paperweight, just a rusting paperweight, to a endless serviceability part versus the people who originally designed and manufactured it costing 50, like that's an insane price savings.
Oh yeah.
So if you're an owner operator, and you're looking to save money where you can, because let's face it, we all are, every business is, and you're going, wow, I can replace the gearbox in each of my helis for $8,000 a piece versus $50,000 a piece, like, duh.
Yeah.
And it comes with all certified paperwork and everything, and you're like, that's a no-brainer decision. So you kind of wonder, like, if you're that owner operator, and you're looking at that company going, maybe I'm just going to start sourcing from third party. Like, yeah, you're the original OEM, but aftermarket parts exist for a reason. Whether it's an automotive or aviation or boats, right? It exists for a reason, because it's just so much cheaper.
Right.
And I think, and if it comes with all the certifying paperwork,
right,
no brainer.
Right. And this kind of touches a little bit on a previous episode where we talked about owner produced parts, right? And why, and what's the authorization for that. We kind of went a little bit about PMA and whatnot. So if you haven't heard that, this will definitely fall into context of that episode, right? We can go on a huge spill with that. But as MVP is right, being able to eat only a fifth of the potential cost, that is game changing, and that's something that gives us high hopes for the industry as a whole, because they're demonstrating a lot of these innovations. They're showcasing that this can work.
Right. But and another reason why I tell you this, you as maintainers, you're the guys, the ones touching the stuff. You're working it. You're probably going to see cost at some point. Do some research. Help your DOM out. Help your organization out. You say, hey, boss. Like, I know we've been spending $50,000 on gearboxes. I found this outfit over here that's taking these same things and doing it for $8,000. And your boss is going, you're a liar. And you're like, no, homie, check it out. I was at this expo and I was talking to them. Let's give them a call. Let's see what they can do for us.
Yep.
And so that's you showing initiative, not only as a maintainer, but as now your boss is looking at you like, oh, this person knows sustainment. They know how to how they're going to keep us operating for a long time. They're making smart decisions.
Right.
They're researching. They're involved. They're researching.
Yep. And for major outfits, like say commercial airlines, a lot of that stuff may be controlled, right? But say like if you're in a smaller outfit like EMS or firefighting or tourism, for instance, right? A lot of those outfits are very small, right? Even if for a large, they're still fairly small. I don't know, like say like a fleet of 14, which is not a lot in hindsight, right? But say like, your outfit is pretty small, or you have some form of influence within your major, right? As a mechanic, because majority of people who comes to expos, which is another reason why I'm glad they changed it to con, is when you're at expos, it's mostly sales reps or marketing reps or big wigs who make big wig decisions, right? And it kind of discourages us as mechanics to show up, because like, what am I going to do in a trade show with mostly suits? We talked a little bit on the previous episode on that, right? But as MVP said, as a mechanic, you go see these innovations and you can start implementing this from the ground floor. Like, we do need these toolboxes that can check tools out without you having to sign it out. You just pull it and they know who it is, where it's going, and so forth. Or here's a part source that can overhaul parts like a fifth of the price.
Here's a better radio piece of test equipment,
Yeah. Or here's a better test set. Here's a better way to do whatever, right? And that's like the stuff that you can bring back and feed it into the system. Like, here's a company, might want to check them out. They have X, Y, and Z. And if they could, the typical answer, let's be honest, they're gonna say, "Fuck you, mechanic. Get your rich and go bang that part, monkey," right? But like at some point, if you voice it enough, if enough people say it, this goes back to the mechanic voice. Like, we need this. Here's an example. We've been to the show or we've been to this demo. It looks like this. We've had the specs. Here's the person, contact if you want to know more, right? You guys can broker a deal, whatever. Not saying pull the trigger on this, but this is an example of what we as the mechanics on the ground making your shit fly need. And eventually enough people say stuff, and they, as MVP said, we're doing the research, we're doing the legwork. This is the stuff that will fit our organization. Eventually the wheels are going to turn. Someone's going to say, "I'm going to be your hero for today." Pitch that up the chain. They get the answer. They get the big promotion. Whatever. You got the tools you need to make the job happen. Win.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
As sad as that is, you know, you're probably not going to get the credit as a mechanic. I'm just going to be honest.
Sure, and that ties into maybe it ties into it, but the Marcus Aurelius statement of you can't change the nature of people or things.
Yeah.
If they're a conniving backstabber who steals ideas, they're going to be a conniving backstabber who steals ideas. But you made the right choice because it was the right. You made the right decision because it was the right choice.
Yes. Right. And it also kind of goes into like, you can do anything as long as you don't care who gets the credit.
Yep.
Right.
That was a Reagan statement.
The end result was you need better equipment to make it happen. And you've done the research. You went to the shows, you went to the demos and so forth. You brought that up the chain. You don't, whoever gets the credit, who cares? They can keep that promotion. But you got what you needed in the long run to make your job easier, safer, more efficient, which is the ultimate way to make things happen. And that's why we highly encourage mechanics, especially, to go to these things. Not just because you get to see the oohs and ahs and touch planes that you've never seen before, which we 100% did. But you get to see all these innovative stuff, or at least these concepts that have proof to it, right? Like, we've demonstrated this. Here's our statistic. Here's how we're going to use it, and so forth, right? And that's what these trade shows are really for. Like, it's sad. It's, in a sense, a marketing pitch. But at least they have to have a working prototype to do it. Not just like, here's a picture of what it would be. Can you please buy it? Like, no, absolutely not.
Right. Yeah. And you really just see, you know, we saw everything from law enforcement, firefighting to luxury.
Yes.
You know, luxury helicopters. And
that can obviously be, that'd be the place to find out that there's openings in those spots, right? They may not be openly advertising it. Some do, some don't. But you demonstrate to them, hey, I know about this. I can do that. Or I used to work on similar systems and blah, blah, blah. And then they start like, you know what? That's a great idea. Hey, are you in the market to do this? Right? Or are you willing to move XYZ to make this happen? Are you willing to give us advice on this or something like that? Like, I haven't thought about it, but maybe, right? The seed's planted in your head now, right? And now you start wondering and start thinking and start collaborating. And then you realize, I can do this. Or maybe I should give you a ring or whatever the case may be. An example was in our case where like we're just perusing around talking about XYZ to a guest and former and friends and whatnot. Random person comes by and says, hey, I couldn't help but overhear what you guys were talking about, maintenance and parts and laws. Would you be willing to give me a little bit more insight to this? Yeah, sure. Right. Long story short, that turns into a contact which we can actually help influence something that we as mechs deal with on the reg. So hopefully good things comes out of that. But again, it's one of those things like you didn't know it, but now that the need has been communicated, now you have a niche that you can fill, right? Like, oh, I didn't realize this was in demand.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. One thing that today really sent home for me was just how small the community is.
Yes.
We had some people recognize us. But more so, when we were talking to certain people while we were having communication, 4 and 5 and 6 people from all over the country would pop over and they'd say, "So-and-so on Instagram? Yeah, that's me. Oh man, I love your your page. I follow, I watch all the videos. I do this. Hey, I'm an owner operator of this Helo, and I fly tours around New York City. Like, hit me up sometime. I'd love to collaborate. I'd love to take you on a tour. I'd love to do,
Yeah.
And it just, social media really helps in that regard. But what I want to send the message home here is just how small a community is. So as Six is saying, you're talking with people and I can do that. Can you do this? Can you help me with that? Like, oh, you have experience in that? Great. Can you kind of like come and show me, explain it to me, or look at our stuff and help us get better?
Yeah.
And then they talk to somebody else and they talk to somebody else. And another individual we was talking about today, he was an old Vietnam era pilot, but he ran into him in Thailand back in the 70s. And they hadn't really seen each other since then. But it was like old times, Yeah. Small community that spans decades.
Mm-hmm.
Just impressive.
Absolutely. And that's another reason why, is because sometimes or another, like, you don't realize, you may have seen someone send off like however many years, decades even, and you see them and go, oh my God, what did you do? Right. And then next thing you know, you start figuring out who's who and what's what. That's another reason why we say, go to these trade shows, these expos, these cons, these demonstrations, whatever, because you never know what you're going to find or who you're going to find that you may have found some common ground, didn't even know you had it, right? We've had so many people that would talk to us like, oh, I grew up in this area. Like, no way, so was I. Or you were just down the street from me or something like that. Definitely go for, if not for the networking, if not for the demonstrations, if not for the knowledge, it's to find that common ground and be able to share it and disseminate it and have lessons learned and all that other stuff. Freaking amazing. Day 2, HAI HELI-Expo, Verticon, Anycon. Great time. Fantastic time. Any final words on anything, Mr. MVP?
If you can, go to one. It's great. You won't regret it, especially if you're in the industry at all. You'll find something of value there. And if you can't go, those of us in the community will try to figure out a way to at least get you information from there.
Yes.
Hey guys, I can't go, work schedule, whatever else, but I'm interested in this. Can you pick me up a brochure or something on, or if you see anything about that, or lanyard or whatever? Like, the community will come together to make it happen.
Oh yes, most definitely. But let us know what you think, right? Like, what sort of conventions, cons, expos, trade shows, etc. have you gone through and you had a memorable experience, whether good or bad? Just call it memorable.
Yeah. I mean, but memorable regardless, because there might be others out there. This is the first one ever for me. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it was a lot of fun. So what other ones out there are we missing that maybe we should look at attending?
Right, exactly. And so let us know what you guys think. What sort of tips and tricks, what sort of stuff that you learned, what other cons or expos or trade shows are out there that are not very well known to the majority, especially for us as mechs, because we're mostly too busy working, let's be real. Right.
Yeah.
But let us know in the comments. Let us know on our social medias, our website, emails, and so forth, whichever way is the easiest and most convenient way for you to reach us. The absolute best way to reach us, have these kind of conversations, and disseminate this kind of info is via our Discord channel on Patreon. We have all sorts of stuff of these type of caliber where we talk back and forth and learn all kinds of things. And this is another way to help us grow the show, grow the influence, grow the communication, and disseminate all this stuff. And we greatly appreciate everyone's support for this, both listeners, patrons, and affiliates, to give us this opportunity to put this all out there. If not for the weekly therapy sessions, as we call it, to kind of get some laughs into, help our days suck less, but it's also to give us the tools, knowledge, and experience to not have to burn our hands on the stove before we figure out the learning has occurred. Right. On that note, hey, we appreciate you all for listening, and we'll see you all on the next one. Have a good one, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
We would like to take this time to thank our patrons for supporting our show and allowing us to make episodes, maintain our gear, and create merch for all of our listeners. With special thanks to Erica Lamont, Chris Hawkins, Eric Shaw, Dan Schubert, Ryan Frushauer, Kyle Keir, Mike Sherwood, Caleb Stockhill, and Jennifer Brofer. Thank you all so much for your support and patronage. If you like our show, please support us on Patreon. You'll receive awesome perks like access to our private Discord, discounts and early access to our merch, first glimpse of our comics and other projects, and so much more. You can further support us and show off your prowess as an aircraft specialist by visiting our shop at cancelformaintenance.com. If you like classy or rugged watches, visit our affiliate Rockwell Time at rockwelltime.com. Use the code CX, the number 4, MX to save 10% off your total order. If you have suggestions for the show or you'd like to be a guest on the show, send us a line on our contact us section at cancelformaintenance.com and we'll do what we can to get both your ideas and yourself on the show. Please support us on social media like Facebook at Cancel for Maintenance, Instagram at CANX for Maintenance Podcast, or Twitter at CXMX Podcast. Please check out our new comic series on the Tapas app. Like, share, subscribe, and comment on our comics. Let us know what you think. Thank you all so much for your support and listenership, and we will catch you all next time.